Imagine having a debt so deep it costs you your soul. Olivia was drowning in the dark shadow of a $50,000 nightmare until she walked straight into the lion's den. She didn't find a savior. She found Henry Jones, a corporate shark with golden, predatory eyes and a strength that can bend solid steel like soft clay. He offered her a deal. He'll crush her enemies, but in exchange, she must become his human anchor, the fake fiancé to a monster who doesn't know how to play nice. Between a mother with a failing heart, a sister who wants to pet a werewolf, and another who's ready to kill him with a silver fork, the business merger is about to get feral. Stay tuned because the pack is just getting started. Whether you've been part of the pack from the beginning or you're just stepping into the den for the first time, welcome to Linas Romantasy collection. We are so glad you're here to get lost in this world of alphas, secrets, and family chaos. If you are loving Olivia and Henry's journey, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on the notification bell icon. You don't want to miss a single chapter of the drama, the heat, and the twists coming your way. I want to get to know my pack. Drop a comment below and tell me exactly where in the world you are listening from. Whether you're in a quiet small town or a bustling city like Henry's, I'd love to see how far our community reaches. Chapter 1. The Vibration of Fear. The phone in my pocket buzzed against my hip bone. It was a hateful, rhythmic sound. Bzz, bzz, bzz. 3 short pulses. A pause. 3 more. I didn't need to look at the cracked screen to know who it was. I knew the rhythm. It was Vinny, the debt collector who had bought my father's gambling debt for pennies on the dollar and was now trying to squeeze blood from a stone. I stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of oatmeal. My hand didn't shake. I wouldn't let it shake. Not while my mother was watching. Mom sat at the small, chipped laminate table. The morning light filtered through the yellow curtains, washing her out. She reached up to adjust her hearing aid, a habit she'd picked up since her last hospital stay. She looked like a ghost. Her skin was translucent, like old parchment paper that would crumble if you touched it too hard. Her hands trembled, a fine, constant tremor, as she lifted her cup of herbal tea. "You're quiet this morning, Olivia," Mom whispered. Her voice was breathless, lacking the power it used to have before the heart attack last winter. "Is work okay?" "Work is great, Mom," I lied. I forced a smile, plastering it onto my face like a mask. "Mr. Jones is actually talking about a bonus, a big one. We might be able to fix the radiator soon." Mom closed her eyes and smiled, the lines around her mouth relaxing. "That's wonderful, Livy. You work so hard for that man. He's lucky to have you, even if he is. What did the news call him? A corporate shark?" "He doesn't even know my name," I thought bitterly. To him, I'm just employee number 4592. I was a junior forensic accountant at Jones Enterprises. I spent my days in a gray cubicle, processing receipts for security services, asset protection, and cleanup crews. I saw the numbers. I knew exactly how ruthless Henry Jones was. He spent millions to crush his enemies without blinking. The phone buzzed again, a long, angry, continuous vibration that rattled my teeth. "Answer the phone, Olivia, or we knock on the door." My stomach dropped like a stone. "I need to use the restroom," I said softly, turning off the stove. "Eat your oatmeal, Mom. It's good for your heart." I walked down the hall calmly. I counted my steps. 1, 2, 3. I stepped into the tiny bathroom with the peeling wallpaper. I locked the door. I turned on the faucet to drown out the sound of my panic. Then I collapsed against the sink, gripping the cold porcelain until my knuckles turned white. I pulled out the phone. The text message was glowing on the screen, a neon green threat in the dim room. "Unknown. Interest just doubled. You owe $50,000. You have 24 hours. We know your mother is home alone during the day." I stared at the mirror. I looked exhausted. Dark purple circles bruised the skin under my eyes. My hair was thrown into a messy bun. I looked like a woman who was drowning. If Vinny came here, if he kicked down that flimsy wooden door, Mom would die. The doctor was clear. No stress, no shocks, her heart is operating at 30%. A sudden spike in blood pressure will stop it. I checked my bank app. 12:43. I had sold my jewelry, I had sold my car, I was taking the bus to work, I had nothing left to sell except my soul. I had only one option left. I knew a man who carried $50,000 in his pocket change, a man who solved problems with violence and money, a man who everyone in the city feared, Henry Jones. It was suicide. He was a monster in a tailored Italian suit. He fired people for breathing too loud, but he was the only monster powerful enough to scare away mine. I wiped my face with a cold washcloth. I put on my lipstick, my war paint. "I'm going to work early, Mom," I called out. I grabbed my purse and walked out the door. I was going to the lion's den, and I wasn't leaving until I made a deal. Chapter 2: The Lion's Den. The elevator at Jones Enterprises moved too fast. My ears popped as we shot past the 40th floor. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Thump, thump, thump. It was loud enough that I worried the other people in the elevator could hear it. Floor 50, the executive suite, the penthouse level. The doors slid open with a soft whoosh. The air up here was different. It didn't smell like the lobby, which smelled of floor wax and coffee. Up here, it was cold. It smelled of ozone, expensive cologne, and silence. The carpet was thick enough to swallow my footsteps. The walls were lined with abstract art that looked angry and sharp. James, the executive assistant, looked up from his sleek glass desk. James was a nice guy. He was Henry's beta, his second in command. But in the human world, he wore a tie and managed the calendar. He looked stressed. He was aggressively typing on a tablet, a sheen of sweat on his forehead. "Olivia," James whispered, his eyes widening behind his glasses. "You shouldn't be up here. He's prowling." "I need to see him, James," I said. My voice was shaky, but I clamped my hands together to hide the tremors. "It's an emergency." "He just fired the VP of marketing for chewing gum in a meeting," James warned, leaning over his desk. "The board is breathing down his neck. They want to oust him. They say he's too volatile. He is in a feral mood, Olivia. He might actually eat you." "I don't care," I said, and I meant it. "I have 24 hours before my life ends. I need 5 minutes." James looked at my face. He saw the desperation. He saw the way I was holding my purse like a shield. He sighed, rubbed his temples, and pressed a button on his intercom. "Sir, Olivia from accounting requests a brief audience." Silence. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. Then, a voice vibrated through the intercom. It was deep, rough. It sounded like rocks grinding together deep underground. "The quiet one?" the voice asked. "Send her in." James winced. "Good luck," he mouthed. I pushed open the heavy oak doors. They were solid wood, probably weighing more than I did. The office was a cave. The blinds were drawn, blocking out the bright morning sun. It was dark, lit only by the blue glow of a massive computer array and a single desk lamp. Henry Jones stood by the window. He was a ghost in the media, a man who sued anyone who took his photo. Most people knew his name, but very few knew his face. That was the only reason I could bring him to my mother's kitchen without a news crew following us. He was huge. That was always the first thing you noticed about him. He was 6'4", with shoulders that strained against the fabric of his black suit jacket. He was staring out at the city skyline like he wanted to burn it down. He didn't turn around when I entered. He just stood there, radiating a heavy, oppressive energy. It felt like standing next to a high-voltage power line. "You process the cleaner invoices," Henry said. He didn't say hello. His voice rumbled in his chest, low and dangerous. "You are discreet. I appreciate discretion. Most of my employees chatter like squirrels." "Mr. Jones," I started. I took a step forward. My heels clicked loudly on the hardwood floor. "I need a loan." He turned slowly, His eyes. That was the second thing you noticed. They weren't brown. They weren't hazel. They were gold, burning, predatory, metallic gold. He looked at me. He tilted his head slightly. He sniffed the air, a subtle flare of his nostrils. "Alone?" Henry asked. He walked toward his desk. He didn't walk. He stalked. Every movement was fluid and lethal. "I am not a bank, Olivia, and I do not give charity." $50,000, I blurted out. The number hung in the air, heavy and impossible. "I will work for free. I will sign a contract for the next 10 years. I will work nights, weekends, holidays, but I need it today." Henry stopped. He leaned his hip against his massive mahogany desk. He crossed his arms. His biceps bulged against the fabric. He looked at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "You smell like terror," he said softly. Chapter 3. The Transaction. I froze. The air in the room seemed to vanish. "Excuse me?" I whispered. "Your heart rate is 120 beats per minute," Henry noted coldly. "You are sweating. Your pupils are dilated. You are not asking for a car loan, Olivia. You are paying a ransom." I couldn't lie to those gold eyes. He saw too much. "Debt collectors," I admitted, my voice trembling. "Illegal ones. They bought my father's debt. They threatened my mother." Henry's expression didn't change. He looked bored. "People threaten people every day. Call the police." "I can't," I gasped. "My mother, she's fragile. She has a severe heart condition. If the police come, if there is shouting, if they kick down the door, the shock will kill her. I need to pay them off quietly. I need them to go away." Henry stared at me. He looked at my trembling hands. He looked at my messy bun and my cheap beige cardigan. He looked at the scuff marks on my shoes. He didn't look sympathetic. He looked calculating. He looked like a wolf, deciding if the rabbit was worth the chase. "I can pay them," Henry said. My heart leaped. "You can?" "I can make them disappear," Henry continued, his voice dropping to a growl. "I can make sure they never say your name again. I can erase the debt." "Thank you," I gasped, tears pricking my eyes. "Thank you, sir. I'll pay you back, I swear." "No," Henry interrupted. He stood up to his full height. "You cannot pay me back on a junior accountant's salary. It would take you 12 years. He walked around the desk. He stood directly in front of me. He loomed over me, blocking out the dim light from the lamp. I had to crane my neck to look him in the eye. "I have a problem, Olivia," Henry said. "The board of directors thinks I am unstable, too aggressive. They are blocking a merger I need. They want to replace me." He laughed, a dark, humorless sound that sent shivers down my spine. "They want me to settle down. They want to see a human anchor, a wife, someone boring, someone safe, someone who makes me look domesticated." He looked me up and down, analyzing me. "You are boring," he said. It wasn't an insult. It was a fact in his mind. "You are quiet. You are loyal. You have worked here for 2 years and never gossiped. You are invisible." I didn't know what to say. "I will pay your debt," Henry said. "I will protect your mother. I will be your shield against the world." He extended his hand. It was large, scarred, and dangerous. "In exchange, you will be my fiancé. You will wear my ring. You will come to galas. You will look at me with love in your eyes, and you will convince the world that I am a civilized man." My brain spun. "Fake dating?" I asked, breathless. "You want to hire me to be your fake wife?" "A business merger," Henry corrected. "Do we have a deal?" I thought of Vinny sending that text. I thought of Mom's frail hand holding her tea. I thought of the fear I lived with every single day. I looked at the monster in front of me. He was dangerous, yes, but he was offering me safety. I reached out. I took his hand. His skin was burning hot. A shock of electricity shot up my arm, startling me. Henry's eyes flashed gold. He gripped my hand tight. Possessive. "Done," he growled. "Now, let's go visit these men who think they can threaten what is mine." Chapter 4. The Predator. James drove the black company limousine. He looked nervous, glancing in the rearview mirror every few seconds. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I sat in the back, pressing myself against the door, as far away from Henry as possible. The air in the car felt heavy, charged with static electricity. We weren't going to the bank to wire money. We pulled up outside a rusted, corrugated metal warehouse in the industrial district, Vinny's territory. "Stay in the car," Henry ordered, opening his door. His voice was flat, unemotional. "No," I whispered, panic seizing my chest. "They have guns, Mr. Jones. You can't just walk in there. You're a CEO, not a vigilante." Henry paused. He turned to look at me. For a second, the human mask slipped entirely. A smirk curled his lips, sharp and terrifying. His canine teeth looked longer than they should have been. "I am many things, Olivia," he purred. "A victim is not one of them." He stepped out. I scrambled to follow him. I couldn't let my boss get shot because of my father's debt. The warehouse smelled of old motor oil, stale beer, and sweat. 3 men sat at a folding card table under a buzzing fluorescent light. They stood up fast, kicking chairs back, pulling weapons from their waistbands. The leader, Vinny, had a neck tattoo and a cruel smile. He slapped a heavy tire iron against his palm rhythmically. Thwack! Thwack! "Well, look at this," Vinny sneered. "Olivia brought a boyfriend. Nice suit, rich boy. Is that silk? It's gonna stain real easy." "I am here to settle the debt," Henry said. His voice was calm, but it filled the cavernous space, bouncing off the metal walls. 50,000, plus interest. "We changed our minds." Vinny laughed, stepping closer to me. He looked at me with hungry, unsettling eyes. "We don't want money anymore. We decided we want the girl. Collateral, you know? Until we feel like letting her go." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees in a second. Henry didn't shout. He didn't move. He just stared at Vinny. "You threatened her mother," Henry said softly. "Yeah, and I'll pay the old hag a visit tonight after we're done with—" Vinny didn't finish the sentence. He swung the tire iron with vicious speed, aiming directly at Henry's skull. I screamed. Henry didn't dodge. He didn't even blink. He just raised his left arm, casually, as if blocking the sun from his eyes. Clang. The sound of metal hitting bone echoed like a gunshot, but there was no snap. There was no scream of pain from Henry. I watched, mouth agape, as the heavy iron bar hit Henry's forearm and stopped dead. Henry stood like a statue. He looked at the tire iron resting on his arm, then at Vinny's terrified face. "Bad decision," Henry whispered. Vinny stumbled back, dropping the weapon. He looked at Henry's arm. The expensive suit fabric was torn, but the skin beneath wasn't even bruised. What are you?" Vinny stammered. Henry's eyes flashed, a bright, burning gold that illuminated the dim room. He opened his mouth, and a sound erupted that wasn't a human voice. It was a shock wave, a primal roar that vibrated in my teeth. "Kneel!" It hit me like a physical blow. My knees buckled instantly, slamming onto the dirty concrete floor. I couldn't breathe. The pressure in the room was immense, like gravity had just increased tenfold. Vinny and his 2 men didn't just kneel, they collapsed. They hit the floor face first, clutching their heads, gasping for air, whimpering as their most basic instincts screamed at them to submit to the alpha. Henry stepped over Vinny's twitching body. He placed a heavy, polished boot on the middle of Vinny's back. "The debt is paid," Henry growled, his voice rough with restrained violence. "If you ever look at her family again, I will not be this gentle." Chapter 5. The Rules of the Pack. The ride to Henry's penthouse was silent, deadly silent. James drove faster now, as if escaping a crime scene. I sat in the back, my entire body shaking. I couldn't stop staring at Henry's left arm. The sleeve of his $3,000 suit was ruined, shredded where the tire iron had hit him. Beneath the torn fabric, his forearm was perfectly smooth, tan skin, corded muscle. Not a scratch, not a bruise. "Stop staring," Henry said. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring out the window at the passing city lights. He sounded bored. "You?" I swallowed the lump of terror in my throat. "You took a tire iron to the arm. It didn't break." "I drink a lot of milk," he said dryly. "And your voice," I whispered. "You made them fall down with one word." "My knees. I couldn't stand up." "What was that?" He turned to look at me. The gold was gone from his eyes, replaced by a dark, guarded brown. "I have a commanding presence," he said dismissively. "That wasn't presence, Henry. That was magic. Or something else." The car stopped in front of a glass skyscraper that pierced the clouds, the Jones Tower. "Come," he ordered. I followed him into a private elevator that only had one button. PH. The penthouse was massive. It was a sprawling space of floor-to-ceiling glass, black marble floors, and cold steel accents. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a high-end hotel lobby or a villain's lair. There were no photos, no plants, no books, just wide-open, echoing spaces. The air smelled sterile, filtered, with just a hint of expensive leather and something earthy underneath, like a forest floor after heavy rain. Henry walked to the kitchen island. It was a slab of black granite the size of a car. "You have questions," Henry said, leaning against the counter. He watched me with those predatory eyes, tracking my movements as I nervously looked around the empty room. "What are you?" I asked, my voice barely audible in the vast space. "I am the man who just saved your life," he replied smoothly, "and I am the man you now belong to, according to our contract." He walked toward me. I backed up until my calves hit a leather sofa. He stopped 2 feet away, invading my personal space. "The deal," I managed to say, trying to find my courage. "We have a deal. I pretend to be your fiancé. You protect my mother." "Yes," Henry agreed, "but there are rules, Olivia. If you are to be part of my circle, you must obey them." He held up a finger. "Rule 1. You do not ask questions about my methods or my strength. You saw nothing tonight." He held up a second finger. "Rule 2. You do not bring other men into this scent. You are marked as mine now, publicly. If another male approaches you with intent, I will take it as a challenge." "A challenge?" "A challenge to violence," he clarified calmly, as if discussing the weather. "And Rule 3, he continued, his voice softening just a fraction. "Your family. They cannot know what I am. If they scream, if they run, it triggers instincts I do not wish to indulge." "I do not want to hunt your mother." I shivered violently. The image of Vinny on the floor flashed in my mind. "My mother has a heart condition," I whispered fiercely. "If you scare her like you scared those men, she will die. You cannot growl at her." Henry pulled back slightly. He looked insulted. "I am civilized," he said, straightening his ruined cuffs. "I can handle a dinner party." Chapter 6. Briefing the Monster. The next morning, I woke up in a guest room that was bigger than my entire apartment. The bedsheets were silk and cold. I found Henry in the living room. He was pacing back and forth in front of the massive windows, like a caged tiger waiting for feeding time. He was wearing a tight gray t-shirt and dark jeans. He looked impossibly large without the suit to hide his muscles. "We have to go to my apartment," I said, walking in and grabbing my purse. "If we're engaged, you have to meet them, today. Mom is already texting me, asking where I was last night." Henry stopped pacing. He looked genuinely pained. "Your apartment, the small box where you live." "It's a home, Henry. It's warm. It has pillows." I took a deep breath. "Okay, sit down. We need a briefing. You need to know what you're walking into before you terrify them." Henry sat on the edge of the black leather sofa. He looked suspicious. "I have negotiated billion-dollar mergers with hostile foreign governments. I think I can handle lunch with 3 women." "You handled thugs with your voice," I corrected. "My sisters are worse. They don't fear death." I stood in front of him like a general briefing a soldier. "First, Sophia. She's 19. She has absolutely zero filter. She will flirt with you. She will probably ask if you have a hot brother. Do not growl at her." Henry frowned, looking confused. "Why would she flirt? I am terrifying. Most humans cross the street to avoid me." "You're terrifying to men," I explained. "To a 19-year-old girl with bad taste in boys, you're a challenge. Second, Zoey. She's 21. She studies biology and psychology. She watches everything. If your eyes glow, she will notice and write a paper about it. Keep your sunglasses on if you feel emotional." Henry grunted. "And the mother?" "Lana," I said softly, the tension leaving my shoulders. "She's sweet. She just wants me to be happy. But her heart—" "Henry, you have to be calm. No sudden movements, no shouting, 'Kneel.' You have to be nice." Henry narrowed his eyes. "Define nice." "Smile," I suggested. "Try it now." Henry bared his teeth. It didn't reach his eyes. It looked more like a snarl before a kill than a friendly gesture. It was terrifying. "Okay, absolutely no smiling," I said quickly. "Just nod and say, 'Yes, ma'am.' Can you do that? Can the Alpha CEO say 'yes, ma'am' to a little old lady?" Henry stood up, grabbing his car keys. He looked insulted. "I am a king," he gumbled. "I do not say 'yes, ma'am' to anyone." "You do today," I said, opening the door to the private elevator. "If you want to keep your human shield, you have to play the part. Now come on, let's go meet the chaos." Henry followed me into the elevator. He looked like a man marching to the gallows. For the first time since I'd met him, the big bad wolf looked genuinely nervous. Chapter 7. The Domestic Zoo. The hallway of my apartment building smelled like boiled cabbage and floor wax. It was a sharp, ugly contrast to the sterile, expensive air of Henry's penthouse. Henry looked painfully out of place. He was wearing the navy sweater I had forced him to buy on the way over, but he still looked like a predator trying to blend in with a flock of sheep. His shoulders were too broad for the narrow corridor. He had to duck slightly to avoid hitting the low-hanging light fixtures. "This place smells of too many humans," Henry muttered, wrinkling his nose. "I can hear 3 different televisions and a baby crying on the 3rd floor." "Ignore the baby," I whispered, fumbling with my keys. My hands were shaking. "Remember the plan. You are Henry. You work in logistics. You like golf. You do not eat people." "I hate golf," he grumbled. "It is a pointless chasing of a ball." I pushed the door open. "Mom, we're home!" Chaos hit us instantly. The apartment was small, cluttered and warm. The TV was blaring a reality show. Something was burning in the kitchen. Garlic bread, probably. Sophia, my 19-year-old sister, was lounging on the sofa upside down. She flipped over the moment she saw Henry, landing on her feet with the grace of a gymnast. She was wearing short shorts and a crop top that said, "Bad Decisions" in glitter. "Holy cow!" Sophia breathed, her eyes going wide. "Liv, you didn't say he was a giant." She marched right up to him. Henry stiffened. I saw his hand twitch, fighting the instinct to push her away. "Hi," Sophia said, looking him up and down shamelessly. "I'm Sophia. You're huge. Do you work out? Or were you just built in a lab?" "Sophia!" Mom's voice came from the kitchen. Lana hurried out, wiping her hands on a floral apron. She looked pale, but her smile was bright. She stopped dead when she saw Henry. She had to crane her neck back to look at his face. "Oh my," Mom whispered. "Olivia, he's very handsome." Henry stood there, frozen. He looked at Sophia, who was practically drooling, and then at Mom, whose heart I could practically hear beating from here. "Hello," Henry said. His voice was deep, rumbling through the small room like thunder. He remembered my instructions. He stiffly extended a hand to Mom. "I am Henry. I like golf." I face-palmed internally. "Golf!" Mom beamed, shaking his massive hand. "That's lovely. Come sit, come sit. I made lasagna. It might be a little burnt on the edges, but it's hot." Henry let himself be dragged to the tiny dining table. He sat on one of our rickety wooden chairs. The wood creaked ominously under his weight. He looked terrified to move, like he might accidentally break the furniture? Or the family. Zoey walked in from her bedroom. She was wearing her thick glasses and holding a biology textbook. She stopped, looked at Henry, looked at the creaking chair, and then looked at me. "He doesn't look like a golfer," Zoey said flatly. "He looks like he breaks rocks for a living." "He's in logistics," I said quickly, pouring water. "Sit down, Zoey." The dinner was a disaster of noise. Sophia asked Henry 20 questions without breathing. "What kind of car do you drive? Do you have tattoos?" "Can you pick me up?" Henry answered in monosyllables. "Sedan. No, no." But every time Mom spoke, Henry's voice softened. He seemed fascinated by how fragile she was. When she dropped her napkin, he caught it before it hit the floor, moving with a blur of speed that made Zoey narrow her eyes behind her glasses. "You have fast reflexes," Zoey noted, stabbing a piece of lasagna. "Table tennis," Henry lied smoothly. I fought the urge to groan out loud, the Alpha King playing ping pong. It was ridiculous, but we had survived the first hour. Chapter 8. The fridge incident. After dinner, the apartment felt like a sauna. The oven had been on too long, and with 4 people and 1 giant werewolf in the room, the air was thick and heavy. Henry was sweating slightly. He ran hot, alpha hot. "I need to take my pill," Mom said, patting her pockets. Her face fell. "Oh no, I think I dropped the bottle behind the fridge earlier." I heard it roll. "I'll get it," I said, standing up. "We just have to shimmy the fridge out a bit." "It's too heavy, Liv," Mom said, looking worried. "It's that old model Dad bought. It weighs a ton. We'll have to wait until we can get a dolly from the super." "I can assist," Henry said. He stood up. The room seemed to get smaller. "It's really heavy, Henry," I warned, trying to catch his eye. "Don't show off. Be human." "I am capable," he said simply. He walked into the narrow galley kitchen. The fridge was an ancient, rusting beast squeezed tightly between the counter and the wall. There was no leverage, no way to grip it properly. I followed him, but Sophia was right behind me, claiming she wanted dessert. Henry didn't shimmy the fridge. He didn't rock it back and forth. He didn't grunt. He just placed one hand on the handle. He didn't even plant his feet. He just pulled. There was a screech of metal on linoleum, but it was fast. He slid the entire refrigerator out 3 feet with one casual motion, as if he were opening a sock drawer. He didn't strain. A muscle didn't even jump in his neck. He reached down, picked up the small orange pill bottle, and slid the fridge back into place with a gentle thud. He turned around and froze. Sophia was standing in the doorway, holding a spoon. Her mouth was open. She looked at the heavy fridge. She looked at Henry's arm. I stopped breathing. This was it. The secret was out. She was going to scream. Mom would hear. Mom would panic. Sophia took a step forward. Her eyes were sparkling with absolute delight. "Okay," Sophia whispered. "That is not yoga, and that is not CrossFit. The floor is slippery," Henry tried. Looking panicked, Sophia laughed. It was a wicked, knowing laugh. She stepped closer, invading his personal space, looking up at him with zero fear. "You're not human, are you?" she whispered, too low for Mom to hear in the living room. I stepped in, placing my hand on Sophia's arm. Sophia, stop. Shh. Sophia waved me off. She looked at Henry. You're like a super soldier? Or a vampire? Henry frowned, insulted. I am not a leech. Wolf, Sophia guessed instantly, her grin widening. Definitely wolf energy. The growly voice. The way you look at Liv like you want to mark her. Henry went still. Mark her? Sophia, I hissed. I knew it, Sophia whispered triumphantly. You're a werewolf. That is so hot. She reached out a hand. Can I touch your ears? Do they pop out or do you have to change fully? Henry looked at me, completely baffled. He had faced armies, he had killed rivals, but he had no idea how to handle a teenage girl who wanted to pet him. No ears, Henry said stiffly. Fine, Sophia shrugged, taking the pill bottle from him. Your secret is safe with me, wolf boy. But you owe me. Big time. She winked and skipped back into the living room. Found them, Mom. Henry is a lifesaver. Henry leaned against the counter, exhaling a long breath. Your sister is unstable. She's fine, I whispered, my heart racing. One down, one to go. Chapter 9. The Waiter. The next day I thought we were safe. I was wrong. Henry insisted on taking us to lunch. He wanted to observe the pack dynamics more, which I suspected meant he just liked Mom's company. She was the only person who didn't treat him like a monster or a wallet. We went to a diner downtown. It was crowded, noisy, and smelled of grease. We squeezed into a booth. Mom and I sat on one side. Henry and Zoey sat on the other. Zoey had been quiet all morning. She was watching Henry over the rim of her coffee cup, her eyes analytical behind her glasses. She noticed how he ate, tearing his toast rather than biting it. She noticed how he tracked movement at the door. Then our waiter arrived. He was a guy in his 20s, confident, with too much hair gel. He didn't look at Henry. He looked straight at me. Well, hello there, the waiter grinned, leaning one arm on our table, invading my space. What can I get a pretty girl like you? Maybe my number on the side? It was a harmless, cheesy pickup line. I opened my mouth to laugh it off. I never got the chance. A low, vibrating sound filled the booth. Grrr. It was deep, subsonic. It rattled the silverware on the table. It wasn't a human sound. It was the sound of a large animal warning a rival to back off. The waiter froze. The smile dropped from his face. He looked at Henry. Henry's eyes were locked on the waiter, and for a split second they weren't brown. They were glowing, molten gold. His lip curled up, revealing teeth that looked sharper than they had a minute ago. Leave, Henry said. One word, heavy with command. The waiter turned pale. He stumbled back, terrified by an instinct he didn't understand. I'll get your waters. Sorry. He scrambled away to the other side of the restaurant. Silence at the table. Oh, Henry, Mom laughed, oblivious. You're so protective. It's sweet, isn't it, girls? I forced a smile. So sweet, Mom. I looked at Zoey. She wasn't smiling. She was staring at Henry's hands, which were gripping the edge of the table so hard the wood was splintering under his fingertips. I need to use the restroom, Zoey said abruptly. She stood up and looked at me. Olivia, come with me. It wasn't a request. I followed her to the back of the diner. The moment the restroom door closed, Zoey spun around. She locked the door. He's a wolf, Zoey said. She didn't ask. She stated it like a math problem she had just solved. Zoey, that's crazy. Don't insult my intelligence, Liv. Zoey cut me off. She crossed her arms. I study biology and psychology. I know what a human larynx sounds like. That growl, that wasn't human, and I saw his eyes reflect light like a cat or a canine. She stepped closer, her face serious. I don't care that he's a monster, Zoey said coldly. He seems rich and he seems to like you. That's fine. But here is the deal. She pointed a finger at my chest. Mom's heart is weak. If she sees him turn into a fur beast, she dies. If he loses control and breaks the furniture, she dies from the stress. He won't, I promised. He's protecting us. He's a predator, Zoey corrected. I'm not stupid, Liv. Just make sure you keep a leash on him, because if he scares Mom, I don't care if he's an alpha or a king, I will find Silver and I will put him down. She unlocked the door and fixed her glasses. Now, let's go finish lunch. I want fries. I stood there, stunned. My chaotic sisters knew. One thought it was hot. The other was ready to kill him if he messed up. And poor Henry thought he was the dangerous one. Chapter 10. The Silver Fork. I walked back to the booth. My legs felt heavy, like I was wading through wet concrete. Zoey walked ahead of me. She looked calm, terrifyingly calm. She adjusted her glasses, smoothed her skirt, and slid back into the booth opposite Henry. She didn't look like a girl who had just threatened to kill a billionaire. She looked like a scientist preparing to dissect a frog. Henry looked up as I sat down next to him. His amber eyes scanned my face. Your heart rate has spiked again, Henry murmured, leaning close to my ear. And you smell of, distress. Did the sister upset you? No, I lied, grabbing a menu to hide my shaking hands. Girl talk, just hormones. Henry frowned. He looked across the table at Zoey. Zoey wasn't looking at the menu. She was rummaging in her oversized tote bag. So, Henry, Zoey said, her voice conversational but sharp as glass. I was reading about allergies recently. Some people are allergic to peanuts, some to shellfish. She pulled an object out of her bag. It wasn't a pen, it wasn't a phone, it was a fork. It wasn't the cheap stainless steel cutlery from the diner. It was an antique fork, heavy, ornate, and dull gray. And some, Zoey continued, locking eyes with him, are allergic to silver. She placed the fork on the table. Clink. Henry flinched. It was subtle, a tiny twitch of his nose, a slight recoil of his upper lip, but I felt it. He shifted in the booth, pressing his thigh harder against mine. That is a very specific utensil, Henry said slowly. His voice dropped an octave. Sterling? Pure sterling, Zoey confirmed. She picked it up and twirled it like a baton. Heirloom. I carry it everywhere. For self-defense. You never know when you might encounter a rabid dog. The air at the table turned electric. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Henry stared at the fork. He looked at Zoey's neck, his jaw muscles feathered. Zoey, Mom chirped, looking up from her menu. Put that away. Why on earth are you carrying Grandma's good silver? You'll lose it. Just testing the weight, Mom, Zoey said, never breaking eye contact with Henry. I want to make sure I have a good grip. Henry let out a low breath. He looked at me. His eyes were wide, conveying a clear message. Your sister is trying to hunt me. I kicked him gently under the table. Be nice. I have no allergies, Henry lied through gritted teeth. I have an iron stomach. Good, Zoey smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Then you won't mind if I keep this on the table, just in case. Chapter 11. The Teacup. The food arrived. Breaking the standoff, Mom had ordered a burger. Zoey had fries, which she ate while holding the silver fork in her other hand. Sophia had ordered a milkshake and was currently staring at Henry's biceps like they were the dessert. Henry had ordered tea. To calm the nerves, he had whispered to me earlier. The waitress set a delicate white porcelain cup in front of him. It sat on a tiny saucer. It looked ridiculous. Henry was a man made of granite and violence. The cup looked like a doll's toy in front of him. Oh, look at that, Sophia giggled. The big bad wolf drinks Earl Grey. That is adorable. Henry glared at her. It is a civilized beverage. He reached for the cup. Careful, Zoey warned, tapping her silver fork against the table. Don't crush it. You know how clumsy big men can be." Henry froze. He knew she was mocking him. He knew that she knew exactly how much strength he was holding back. He took a deep breath. He pinched the tiny handle of the teacup between his thumb and forefinger. His hand was massive. The handle disappeared completely. He lifted it. His hand shook, not from weakness, but from the sheer effort of not crushing the porcelain into dust. The muscles in his forearm rippled under his shirt. A vein popped in his forehead. "Are you okay, Henry?" Mom asked, pausing mid-bite. "You look like you're straining." "I am. Savoring," Henry gritted out. He brought the cup to his lips. He took a sip. He set it down. Clack. The sound was a little too hard. A hairline fracture appeared on the saucer. "Oops," Sophia whispered. "Too strong." Henry looked at the crack. He looked at Mom. "I believe this china is defective," Henry said quickly. Mom laughed, patting his arm. "Oh, Henry, you're just a bull in a china shop. It's charming. Olivia needs a strong man. Her father couldn't lift a grocery bag without complaining." Henry preened slightly at the compliment. He puffed out his chest. "I am very strong, Lana," he agreed. "Strong enough to handle us?" Sophia asked, winking. "I am rethinking that assessment," Henry muttered into his tea. I watched him. He was surrounded. Zoey had a weapon. Sophia was objectifying him. Mom was treating him like a clumsy giant. And yet, he hadn't run. He hadn't growled. He was drinking tea from a cracked cup to make my mother happy. My chest squeezed. It wasn't fear this time. It was something softer. He's actually trying, I thought. He's trying to be part of the pack. Chapter 12. The Leak. 2 days later, the chaos followed us home. It was a Tuesday evening. Henry had insisted on coming over to check the perimeter, which meant sitting on my couch and watching Jeopardy with Mom. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when it happened. Hiss! A violent spray of water erupted from under the sink. It hit me in the chest, soaking my shirt instantly. "Ah!" I screamed. The pipe burst!" Water flooded the floor. It was freezing cold. "Oh dear!" Mom yelled from the living room. "Turn it off! Turn off the valve!" "It's stuck!" I cried, grabbing the rusty metal valve under the sink. "It's rusted shut!" Henry appeared in the doorway. He took one look at the water, spraying everywhere, soaking the cheap linoleum. "Move!" he commanded. "We need a plumber," I sputtered, wiping water from my eyes. "I'll call the super—" "No!" Henry growled. "I do not allow strange men into my territory. I will handle it." He stepped into the puddle. His expensive Italian loafers were ruined instantly. He didn't care. He dropped to his knees and crawled under the sink. "Henry, you need a wrench," I yelled. "It's rusted metal." "I am the wrench," he replied. I heard a grunt, a deep guttural sound of exertion, then the screech of tearing metal. Screech, snap! The hissing stopped. Henry slid out from under the sink. He was wet. His hair was plastered to his forehead. His white dress shirt was translucent, sticking to his chest. In his hand, he held a piece of lead pipe. He hadn't unscrewed it. He hadn't turned the valve. He had pinched the metal pipe shut with his bare fingers. He held up the crimped metal. The end was flattened completely, sealed tight by the force of his grip. "Leak contained," Henry announced. Mom walked into the kitchen. She looked at the water. She looked at the flattened pipe in Henry's hand. "Did you fix that?" Mom asked, blinking. "I improvised," Henry said. He stood up, water dripping from his nose. "He crimped it," Mom gasped, delighted. "Look at that grip strength. Olivia, look. He sealed it like a sandwich bag." I stared at the pipe. It was thick lead. He had crushed it like Play-Doh. "Yes, Mom," I whispered. "Very strong hands." Zoey walked in. She looked at the pipe. She looked at Henry. "That creates a pressure buildup in the main line," Zoey critiqued, "but effective in a crisis. Good job, Hulk." Henry looked at me. He looked proud of himself. He was soaking wet, he smelled like old plumbing, and he had just destroyed my sink to save me. I provided a solution, Henry said to me, his gold eyes shining. You broke the plumbing, Henry. I stopped the water, he corrected. The pack is dry. I looked at him, wet, arrogant, and ridiculously handsome. Thank you, I said softly. He smirked. You owe me a new shirt. Chapter 13. The Rival. The plumbing incident had earned Henry a new level of respect from Mom. He's so handy. And a deeper level of suspicion from Zoey. He has hydraulic grip strength. But for Sophia, Henry was old news. She had a new obsession. 2 days later, I came home from work to find Sophia sitting on the kitchen counter, swinging her legs. She was beaming. I met someone, Sophia announced. Henry, who was sitting at the table pretending to read a newspaper, he was actually guarding the door, didn't look up. He didn't care about teenage romances. That's nice, Soph, I said, dropping my keys. Who is he? A drummer? A DJ? Better, Sophia said. He's a businessman, like Henry, but flashier. He wears white suits, and he has a really nice smile, sharp teeth. Henry stopped reading. The newspaper crumpled slightly in his grip. White suit? Henry asked. His voice was low. Yeah, Sophia said, scrolling through her phone. I met him at the coffee shop near campus. He bought me a latte. He asked a lot of questions about you guys. Specifically, you, Henry. He wanted to know if you were taking good care of the livestock. The air in the room vanished. Henry stood up slowly. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. Livestock? Henry repeated. I know, weird word, right? Sophia laughed. But he was charming. He gave me his handle. His name is Kendrick. Henry growled. It wasn't a stomach rumble. It was a vibrating threat that shook the water in my glass. Kendrick, Henry snarled. The Southern Alpha. Alpha? Sophia perked up. Is that like a fraternity? He is an enemy, Henry said, turning to me. His gold eyes were blazing. He is a rival. He is dangerous. He kills for sport. He bought me a caramel macchiato, Henry, Sophia argued. Murderers don't buy coffee. He is scouting, Henry said, pacing the small kitchen. He smells my scent on you. He knows I have claimed this territory. He is testing my defenses. He turned to Sophia. He pointed a finger at her face. Block him, Henry commanded. Sophia narrowed her eyes. You're not my dad, Henry. You're just my sister's fake grumpy boyfriend. I am the king, Henry roared. And I'm a Gemini, Sophia shot back. We all have titles. Mom walked in from the laundry room holding a basket of towels. Why is everyone shouting? Henry, stop looming over Sophia. You look like a gargoyle. Henry stepped back, breathing hard. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Control your pack. Sophia, I said firmly. If Henry says the guy is bad news, he's bad news. Block him. Sophia rolled her eyes. Fine, whatever. Jealousy is such an ugly color on you, Henry. She hopped off the counter and stormed into her room. Henry watched her go. He looked ready to burn the building down. He touched her, Henry whispered to me. I can smell his cologne on her jacket. Sandalwood and arrogance. It's just coffee, Henry. It starts with coffee, Henry warned. It ends with a turf war. Chapter 14. The DM. I thought the crisis was averted. I was naive. That evening, the fridge was empty. The ancient appliance Henry had slid around like a toy was humming, but inside there was only a jar of mustard and half a loaf of bread. We need groceries, Mom sighed, but my pension check doesn't clear until Tuesday. I can order, Henry started. No, Mom cut him off. You do too much, Henry. We'll make do. Toast night. Henry looked horrified. Toast is not a meal, it is heated bread. It's fine, I said. We're used to it. I went to the bedroom to change out of my work clothes. When I came back, the living room was quiet. Too quiet. Henry was standing behind the sofa. He was staring down at Sophia, who was lying on the cushions texting. Henry's body was rigid. Every muscle was locked tight. His nostrils were flaring. "What are you doing?" Henry asked. His voice was soft but terrifying. "Texting," Sophia said, not looking up. "You are texting him," Henry accused. Sophia sat up. "How did you know?" "I can smell the betrayal," Henry growled, "and I can see the reflection in the window." I ran over. "Sophia, you said you blocked him." "I unblocked him," Sophia defended. "Mom said we were out of food. I just complained about it on my story," Kendrick replied. He asked what we liked to eat. Henry snatched the phone out of her hand. "Hey!" Sophia yelled. Henry read the screen. His face turned a dangerous shade of red. "He sent a winky face," Henry read aloud. The disgust in his voice was palpable. And he asked, "Does the big dog let you starve?" Henry looked at the phone like he wanted to bite it in half. "The big dog," Henry whispered. "He called me a dog." "Give it back." Sophia jumped for the phone. Henry held it high above his head. He looked at me. "He is mocking my ability to provide," Henry stated. "He is insinuating that I cannot feed my pack." "Henry, it's just a text," I said, trying to de-escalate. "It is an act of war," Henry corrected. "He knows the fridge is empty. He is using your hunger to undermine my authority." He looked at Sophia. "Tell him we are full," Henry commanded. "Tell him we feast like kings." "We're eating toast, Henry," Sophia deadpanned. Dry toast. Henry looked at the empty kitchen. He looked at Mom, who was cheerfully putting bread in the toaster. He looked at the phone. "Not for long," Henry vowed. "He wants a measuring contest? Fine." He tossed the phone back to Sophia. "Do not accept any deliveries," Henry warned. "If a white van comes, scream." Chapter 15. The Delivery. The next morning, I was drinking coffee when the doorbell rang. It wasn't a normal ring. It was aggressive. Ding-dong, ding-dong. Henry, who had slept on our uncomfortable couch for security, was at the door in a second. He was wearing yesterday's rumpled suit pants and a tight undershirt. He ripped the door open. A delivery driver stood there, trembling. He held a massive white box. It was heavy. Cold steam was leaking from the edges. Dry ice. "Delivery for Sophia," the driver squeaked. Henry looked at the box. He saw the logo. It wasn't Amazon. It was a wax seal, a wolf skull. Henry snarled. He actually snarled at the UPS guy. The driver dropped the box and ran. "What is it?" Mom called from the kitchen. "Contraband," Henry said. Sophia ran into the room. "My package!" She knelt by the box and ripped the tape. Henry stood over her, his arms crossed, watching with dark, hateful eyes. She opened the lid. Inside, nestled in dry ice, sat 4 massive, thick-cut tomahawk steaks. They were beautiful, deep red, perfectly marbled fat. They looked like they cost more than my rent. Nestled in the center was a single white rose and a card. Sophia picked up the card. "Ooh, it smells like sandalwood." "Read it," Henry ordered. Sophia cleared her throat. "For the chaotic ones, I heard the pantry was bare. A real alpha feeds the pack. Enjoy. K." Silence. "Oh my," Mom said, walking in. She looked at the meat. "Those are magnificent. Look at the marbling. That's Wagyu beef, isn't it?" "It is," Henry said through gritted teeth. "What a thoughtful young man," Mom said. "To send food? That's very traditional." "It is an insult," Henry roared. We all jumped. "He is marking his territory," Henry shouted, pointing at the steaks. "He is saying I am weak. He is saying I cannot provide. He is trying to poach you with cow parts." "Delicious cow parts," Zoey noted, inspecting a steak. "This is high quality, Henry. Don't be bitter." "I am not bitter," Henry yelled. "I am insulted." He grabbed his phone. He dialed a number. "James," Henry barked into the phone. "Empty the vault. Go to the private reserve." "Yes, that reserve. I need meat. All of it." He looked at me, his eyes wild. "He sent 4 steaks?" Henry laughed maniacally. "I will bring a cow. I will bring the whole farm. I will bury this apartment in protein." "Henry, calm down," I begged. "It's just lunch." "It is not lunch, Olivia," Henry said, grabbing his suit jacket. "It is war." He pointed at the white box. "Do not eat that enemy meat. It is tainted with disrespect. Wait for the king." He stormed out the door. I looked at the beautiful steaks. I looked at Mom. "Well," Mom said, picking up the white rose, "at least we don't have to eat toast." Chapter 16. The Meat War. 30 minutes later, the street outside our apartment building looked like a presidential motorcade had arrived. 3 black SUVs screeched to a halt in the fire lane. Doors flew open in perfect synchronization. Men in dark suits and earpieces jumped out. They weren't carrying guns. They were carrying coolers. Huge, silver, industrial-grade coolers. Henry stepped out of the lead car. He had changed. The rumpled suit was gone. He was now wearing a pristine black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms that looked like they were carved from mahogany. He marched up the front steps like a general invading a country. I ran out to the porch. "Henry, 3 cars? Really? The neighbors are going to call the cops." "I do not do things halfway," Henry said, brushing past me. He didn't look at me. His eyes were scanning the perimeter for the enemy. "Where is it? Where is the insult?" Mom walked out onto the porch, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. She stopped dead when she saw the convoy. She saw the army of men carrying trays of marinated meat, bags of charcoal, and what looked like a portable professional smoker. "Oh my heavens!" Mom gasped. "Henry, did you rob a grocery store?" Henry smiled at her. It was his best, charming billionaire smile, though his eyes were still flashing with territorial rage. "Hello, Lana," he said smoothly. "I heard the pantry was empty. I wanted to contribute." "Contribute?" Mom laughed, looking at the mountain of supplies piling up on the sidewalk. "You brought enough to feed an army." "A pack," Henry corrected softly. "I feed my own." He snapped his fingers. Enzo, his terrifying head of security, stepped forward. He was holding a massive wooden crate with brass hinges. He looked like he was carrying holy relics. "Put it in the kitchen," Henry commanded, "next to the white box. Do not let them touch." We crowded into the small kitchen. It was ridiculous. We had barely enough counter space for a toaster, and now we had a meat processing plant. On the left side of the counter, Kendrick's white box with the rose. On the right side, Henry's massive wooden crate. Mom stood in the middle. She looked like a judge on a cooking show. "Well," Mom said, clapping her hands, "this is exciting. Let's see what Henry brought." Henry nodded to Enzo. Enzo pried the lid off the crate with a pry bar. Inside, resting on black velvet, yes, actual velvet, were steaks the size of dinner plates. They were thick. They were perfectly red. They smelled like iron and victory. "Dry-aged for 60 days, Henry announced, his voice dropping to a reverent whisper. "From my private reserve. The cattle were massaged daily. They listened to classical music." Mom's jaw dropped. "They listened to music?" "Beethoven," Henry said seriously. "It makes the texture more robust. Unlike—" He pointed a disdainful finger at Kendrick's gift. "That commercial garbage. That meat has no soul." "It has a rose, though," Sophia teased, poking the flower. Henry's eye twitched. A low growl started in his chest. I elbowed him hard in the ribs before Mom could hear. "Aggressive flavor," Henry corrected through gritted teeth. "Real flavor, not that perfumed trash. It is an insult, Henry insisted, turning to Mom. Lana, please, allow me to cook. I will prove which is superior. I will not let you eat inferior protein. Mom looked at the two piles of meat. She looked at Henry's desperate, intense face. A cook-off, Mom declared. I'll get the aprons. Chapter 17. The Taste Test. The tiny balcony behind our apartment smelled like smoke, testosterone, and expensive fat. Henry stood at the small, rusted grill. He had refused the floral apron Mom offered. The alpha does not wear flowers, he had whispered to me. Instead, he was grilling in his dress shirt, not caring about the grease splatter. He held the tongs like a weapon. He flipped the meat with terrifying precision. James, Henry barked to his assistant. Salt. James ran forward with a grinder. Enzo, Henry commanded. Pepper, coarse grind. Enzo marched forward with the pepper mill. Mom sat at the patio table with a glass of lemonade, fanning herself. She watched Henry work. He's very passionate, Mom whispered to me. I've never seen a man frown so much while cooking burgers. He looks like he's performing surgery. He takes food safety very seriously. I lied. Sophia walked up to the grill, phone in hand. She was recording. Hey, Chef Angry, she said. Kendrick just viewed my story. He sent a fire emoji. Henry froze. The tongs clicked menacingly. Flames shot up from the grill, licking his expensive sleeve. He didn't even flinch. Tell him, Henry growled, not looking up from the searing meat, that if he comes near this fence, I will turn him into a rug. I'll tell him you said hi, Sophia chirped. Henry slapped a steak onto a plate. He walked over to the table and placed it in front of Mom. He ignored everyone else. Eat, Henry commanded. Mom blinked. Don't you want to join us? I cannot eat until the matriarch is fed, Henry said stiffly. Tell me it is the best you have ever tasted. Mom cut a piece of the meat. She took a bite. She chewed slowly. Henry watched her. He wasn't breathing. The king of the werewolves, the billionaire tycoon who owned half the city, was terrified of a middle-aged woman's Yelp review. His hands were clenched at his sides. Oh my, Mom said. She closed her eyes. Henry, this is delicious. It melts in your mouth. Henry exhaled. His shoulders dropped 3 inches. He looked triumphant. Better than the other box? He asked, pointing at the rejection pile of Kendrick's steaks. Much better, Mom agreed. The seasoning is perfect. Henry smirked. It was a dark, arrogant smirk. He looked at the horizon, toward where Kendrick's territory lay miles away. Victory, he whispered to me. I win. I sighed, handing him a napkin. Yes, dear. You win the meat war. Now please sit down and eat before you pass out from stress. He sat down. He ate 3 steaks in under 5 minutes. He didn't use a knife. He tore the meat with his teeth. Zoey watched him from across the table, her silver fork resting by her plate. Efficient, she noted. Hungry, Henry corrected. For the first time all day, he looked relaxed. He was surrounded by noise, cheap patio furniture and chaos, but his pack was fed, and he was the one who fed them. Chapter 18. Game night. The sun went down, turning the sky a bruised purple. The plates were cleared. Henry stood up. He adjusted his cuffs, hiding the grease stains. This has been adequate, Henry said. I must return to the city. I have emails to ignore. Nonsense, Mom said. She stood in front of the sliding glass door, blocking his exit. She looked tiny next to him, but she had the absolute power of a mother. You are stressed, Henry, Mom declared. Your shoulders are like rocks. You frown even when you chew. You need to relax. Henry looked at me. His eyes screamed, Save me. Mom, I tried. He really is busy. The global market never sleeps. Neither do I, Mom said. I bought a new board game. It's called Charades. And nobody leaves until we play. She reached up and locked the deadbolt. Click. Henry looked at the lock. He looked at the balcony railing. He was calculating the jump. It was 3 stories down. He could make it. Do not jump, I whispered. It is the fastest route, Henry argued. Stay, I begged, grabbing his hand. For her heart. She's having fun. Henry looked at Mom, who was humming as she set up the game board. He looked at my hand holding his. He sighed. It sounded like a tired deflating. Fine, Henry grumbled, but I play to win. I do not lose at games. We gathered in the living room. The TV was off for once. The only light came from the lamps, casting warm shadows on the walls. Team won, Mom announced. Me and James. He has a kind face. James beamed. I am excellent at pantomime, Lana. Team 2, Mom continued. Sophia and Enzo, Sophia squealed. Yes, come here, big guy. We need a team name. How about Beauty and the Beast? Enzo sat on the delicate floral sofa. He looked like a bear trapped in a dollhouse. He refused to make eye contact with anyone. And Team 3, Mom finished. Olivia and Henry. Henry sat next to me on the floor. He sat cross-legged, his suit stretched tight across his chest. He looked intensely serious, like he was about to negotiate a treaty, not act out a movie title. What are the rules? Henry asked. Do we eliminate the other teams? Is there a physical component? No tackling, I said quickly. You just act out a word. No talking, just gestures. Henry nodded. Deception. Body language. I understand. It is like corporate espionage. Sure, I said. Exactly like that. The game began. It was chaos. Sophia kept guessing The Bachelor for every single clue. James was surprisingly graceful. Enzo stood perfectly still for 2 minutes acting out Statue of Liberty and won the round. Then it was Henry's turn. He stood up. He walked to the center of the rug. He picked a card from the bowl. He looked at it. He frowned. He looked at me. The timer started. Henry crouched down. He moved slowly. He looked predatory. He bared his teeth. He swiped his hand through the air like a claw. Bear, Mom guessed. Tiger, James shouted. Monster, Sophia yelled. My type. Henry shook his head aggressively. He pointed to his chest. He puffed out his chest. He looked majestic and terrifying. He let out a silent roar that shook the curtains. King, I shouted. Lion, the Lion King. Henry pointed at me. Yes. I win, Henry said, sitting back down. That was simple. The lion is an apex predator, like me. He leaned back against the sofa. His arm brushed mine. He wasn't stiff anymore. He was warm. I looked at him, the alpha king sitting on a cheap rug, playing games with a family that wasn't his, just to make an old woman smile. You're good at this, I whispered. I am adapting, Henry whispered back. He took my hand and laced his fingers through mine. It is not terrible. For a moment, the debt, the threats, and the lies felt far away. It felt like a real home. But outside, in the dark street below, a black sedan rolled slowly past the building. The driver watched the window, waiting for the lights to go out. The game was over. The hunt was about to begin. Chapter 19. The Realization. The drive back to the city was different this time. Usually, the silence in the armored limousine was tense, a buffer zone between boss and employee. But tonight, the silence felt heavy with something else, longing. I watched the streetlights blur past the tinted window. My ears were still ringing with the noise of the apartment, Sophia's laughter, the clatter of dice, Mom's humming. Beside me, Henry stared at his hands. He rubbed his thumb over his palm, as if he could still feel the warmth of the cheap plastic game pieces. It was loud, Henry said softly. He didn't look at me. I know, I apologized. We're a lot. I can tell Mom to tone it down next time. No, Henry corrected quickly. He turned his head. His gold eyes caught the passing streetlights. I did not say it was bad, I said it was loud. The silence in my tower. It has teeth. It eats you alive. He looked out the window again. Tonight, for a few hours, the silence couldn't find me. My chest squeezed. For the first time, I didn't see the billionaire tyrant. I saw a man who lived in a glass cage high above the world, completely alone. "You're welcome back anytime," I whispered. "Mom likes you. She thinks you're eccentric, but she likes you." "She thinks I am a clumsy giant who breaks teacups," Henry grumbled, but there was no bite in it. The car stopped. We took the private elevator up to the penthouse. The doors slid open. The air hit us instantly, cold, filtered, sterile. It smelled of lemon polish and nothingness. The vast, empty living room looked like a museum exhibit, untouched by human life. Henry stopped in the foyer. He loosened his tie, but he didn't storm off to his office like he usually did. He stood there, looking at the black marble floor. "It is cold," he noted. "I'll turn up the thermostat," I said, moving toward the control panel. "That is not the kind of cold I mean," Henry said. He reached out. His large, rough hand caught mine. He didn't pull me, he just held on. His grip was firm, grounding. His skin was burning hot against my cool fingers. He looked at our joined hands. He traced the line of my knuckles with his thumb. "In the car," Henry murmured, his voice low and rough. "When you held my hand during the game, you were not pretending for your mother. She was in the kitchen." I froze, my heart hammered against my ribs. I guess not." "Why?" he asked. He looked up, searching my face with an intensity that made my knees weak. "The contract does not require affection when no one is watching." "You looked lonely, Henry," I admitted. "You looked like you needed an anchor." He stepped closer, the heat radiating off him wrapped around me like a blanket. "I do," he whispered. "I need an anchor." He didn't kiss me, he just squeezed my hand, tight, a silent confession. Then he let go, the loss of contact leaving my skin tingling. "Good night, Olivia," he said roughly. He turned and walked into the shadows of his office. I stood alone in the cold foyer. The line between the deal and the truth was getting blurry, and I was terrified that I wanted to cross it. Chapter 20. The Shadow. While Henry and I slept in the ivory tower, something dark was moving in the streets below my mother's apartment. A black sedan sat idling 2 blocks away. The engine purred, low and menacing. The windows were tinted so dark they looked like oil slicks. Inside, the air smelled of stale cigarettes and cheap leather. Vinny sat in the passenger seat. He was rubbing his arm, the arm Henry had nearly shattered with the tire iron. He winced with every movement. "He's gone," the driver said. "The wolf left an hour ago." Vinny spat out the window. "You sure? I ain't going back in there if that freak is still around." He bent steel Marco with one hand. "It was a trick, Vinny," Marco sneered. "Probably a hollow prop designed to scare lowlifes. Nobody is that strong. He's just a rich guy with a loud voice." "He's gone?" Marco repeated. He tapped the steering wheel. "I saw the limo leave. It's just the women now. The old lady. The 2 girls." Vinny grinned. It wasn't a nice grin. It was a jagged slash of malice in the dark car. "Good," Vinny whispered. "The boss isn't happy about the money. But he's really unhappy about the disrespect. Nobody makes us kneel. Nobody." He reached into the glove box and pulled out a heavy black object. He checked the magazine. Click-clack. "We go in tomorrow night," Vinny decided. "We wait for the storm. The forecast says heavy rain. Thunder covers the noise." "What about the neighbors?" "Neighbors don't look outside when it rains," Vinny said. "We go in. We grab the girl. The quiet one. Olivia. She's the one he likes. We take her. We make him pay double." "And the old lady?" Marco asked. Vinny looked at the apartment building. He saw the dim light in the living room window where my mom was probably reading a book, feeling safe because Henry had fed them. "She's collateral," Vinny shrugged. "If her heart gives out, that's on him." He leaned back in the seat, watching the house like a vulture. "Enjoy your sleep, ladies," Vinny whispered. "Tomorrow, the big bad wolf won't be there to save you." Chapter 21. The Warning. The next morning, the sky was a bruised gray. The air was thick and humid. A storm was coming. Henry was agitated. He paced the penthouse kitchen, ignoring his coffee. He kept checking his phone. He kept sniffing the air, even though we were 50 stories up. "I need to go to the apartment," Henry announced suddenly. "Again?" I asked, buttering toast. "Henry, we were just there. You can't hover. Mom needs space to water her begonias." "I have a bad feeling," Henry growled. He grabbed his jacket. "The air tastes metallic, like blood on a coin. Get your things." "My things?" "We are moving them," Henry stated. "Today. Now." We drove to the apartment in record time. Henry drove himself today, an aggressive black SUV. He took corners too fast. When we arrived, he didn't knock. He unlocked the door with the key Mom had given him and marched inside. "Pack a bag," Henry announced to the room. Mom was sitting in her armchair, knitting. She looked up, startled. "Henry? Hello to you too. Would you like a biscuit?" "No biscuits," Henry said, pacing the small living room. He checked the window locks. He checked the deadbolt. "Lana, I want you to come stay at the penthouse for a few days. The girls too." "Whatever for?" Mom asked, clicking her knitting needles. "Termites," Henry lied. "I suspect termites. I need to fumigate." "I don't see any termites," Mom said, looking at the ceiling. "And I certainly can't leave now. My garden club is coming over on Thursday. And the forecast calls for rain. My hydrangeas need me." "I will buy you new hydrangeas," Henry pleaded. "I will buy you a botanical garden. Just please, get in the car." "No," Mom said firmly. She stood up. She was 5'0" facing a 6'4" alpha king. She put her hands on her hips. "This is my home, Henry. I raised my babies here. My husband died in that bedroom. I am not leaving just because you have a hunch about bugs." "It is not safe!" Henry roared. The control slipped. His voice shook the window panes. Mom didn't flinch. She just looked disappointed. "Henry Jones," she scolded, "do not raise your voice in this house." Henry froze. His mouth snapped shut. He looked at me, helpless. He could command armies. He could crush steel. But he could not make this stubborn old woman move. "Mom," I tried. "Maybe a vacation would be nice. The penthouse has a jacuzzi." "I don't like bubbles," Mom said, sitting back down. "I am staying right here. Now sit down, Henry. You look manic. I'll make tea." Henry walked to the window. He looked down at the street. He stared at the spot where the black sedan had been parked the night before. He sniffed. He smelled it. Stale smoke. Fear. Malice. The enemy had been here. He turned back to the room. He looked at Mom's fragile chest, rising and falling. He looked at Sophia and Zoey laughing in the kitchen. He couldn't force them. If he grabbed Mom, the shock might kill her. If he told the truth, the shock might kill her. He was trapped. "Fine," Henry said, his voice low and dangerous. "You stay." He took off his jacket. He threw it on the chair. He loosened his tie. "Then I stay too," Henry declared. "I am sleeping on the floor. James will bring sleeping bags. Enzo will stand on the roof." "Henry, that's ridiculous," Mom sighed. "It is non-negotiable, Lana," Henry said. He sat on the floor in front of the door, crossing his arms. An immovable object. "The storm is coming, and no one enters this den without getting past me." Chapter 22. The Storm. The rain started an hour later. It wasn't a gentle shower. It was a deluge. Water hammered against the windows, like handfuls of gravel. Thunder shook the floorboards. The sky turned a bruised, ugly purple, lit only by jagged flashes of lightning. Inside the apartment, the mood was suffocating. Henry was still sitting on the floor in front of the door. He hadn't moved. He hadn't blinked. He was staring at the wood grain as if he could see through it. Enzo was gone, prowling the roof or the alley, a silent shadow in the rain. The perimeter is quiet. Enzo had signaled through the comms before the interference started. But the storm is masking everything. Visibility is 0. James, the beta assistant, was sitting at the dining table pretending to play solitaire, but his hands were shaking. He kept glancing at Henry. "Henry, please," Mom said, coming out of the kitchen with a tray. "The floor is cold. Sit on the sofa. Have a cookie." "I am fine, Lana," Henry said. His voice was tight. "The floor allows me to feel vibrations." "Vibrations," Mom sighed. "You act like we're under siege." "We are," Henry whispered, too low for her to hear. I sat on the sofa, hugging a pillow. My stomach was in knots. I watched Henry's back. The muscles were coiled tight under his shirt. He looked like a statue of a guardian gargoyle, minus the wings. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Bzzzt. The lamp in the corner buzzed. The TV screen glitched. "Oh, bother," Mom said, looking up at the ceiling fixture. "The storm must be hitting the lines." Then, total darkness. The apartment plunged into black. No streetlights outside, no hum of the refrigerator, just the roaring sound of the rain and the heavy, terrifying silence inside. I shivered, the damp cold of the storm seeping through the windows. I moved closer to Henry's silhouette. He was radiating heat like a furnace, a solid wall of warmth in the freezing dark. Henry stood up instantly. I couldn't see him, but I heard the rustle of his clothes. "James." Henry's voice cut through the dark. It wasn't his CEO voice. It was his alpha voice. "Status." I heard James fumbling with a phone. "Dead, sir. The security feed is black. The external cameras are offline. It's not the storm." "They cut the power," Henry growled. My blood ran cold. "Who cut the power?" Sophia asked from the hallway, her voice trembling slightly. "Is it a blackout?" "Mom," Henry barked. "Go to the kitchen. Stay away from the windows." "I can't see a thing," Mom complained, bumping into a chair. "Where are the candles?" "James will help you," Henry commanded. "James, get her to the kitchen. Now. Keep her there." "On it," James said. His voice was forced cheerfulness. "Come along, Lana. I know a great song we can sing while we look for matches. It helps with the dark." "A song?" Mom asked, confused. "James, why are you pushing me?" "Safety," James chirped. He guided her firmly out of the living room. The kitchen door swung shut, muffling their voices. We were alone in the main room. Me, Henry, Enzo, who had slipped in through the balcony door silently, and my sisters. "Henry," I whispered, "are they here?" Henry didn't answer. He turned to the door. He sniffed the air. "3 of them," he murmured. "Heartbeats, sweat, steel." He rolled up his sleeves in the dark. "Get behind the sofa," he ordered us. "Do not come out." Chapter 23. The Breach. We scrambled behind the large, overstuffed floral sofa, me, Sophia, and Zoey. Zoey was holding her silver fork. Her hand was steady, but her breathing was fast. Sophia was gripping my arm so hard her nails dug into my skin. "Is this real?" Sophia whispered. "Is this a robbery?" "Shh," I hissed. The front door shook. Thud. Someone had kicked it hard. The deadbolt rattled in the frame. The wood groaned. Henry stood in the center of the room. He was a shadow among shadows. He didn't take a fighting stance. He just stood there, relaxed, waiting. Thud. Another kick. A crack appeared in the doorframe. A sliver of lightning-lit hallway appeared. "Open up!" a voice screamed from the other side. "We know you're in there!" "Vinny." My heart stopped. He had come back. "Henry," I whimpered. "Quiet," Henry commanded. Crash. The door splintered open. It flew off its hinges, slamming onto the floor with a deafening bang. 3 figures stormed in, illuminated by a flash of lightning. They wore dark hoodies and ski masks. They brought the smell of rain and violence with them. One held a baseball bat. One held a long, serrated hunting knife. And Vinny, the leader, held a brand new crowbar. "Nobody move!" Vinny screamed, swinging the crowbar wildly. "Give us the cash! Give us the girl!" He pointed the crowbar at Henry. "You!" Vinny sneered, recognizing the silhouette. "Rich boy, I see you're still here. Ready for round 2? Henry didn't move. He didn't speak. He just let out a low, vibrating growl that shook the floorboards beneath our feet. "Get him!" Vinny yelled to his goons. "Mom!" Sophia screamed, forgetting the plan. From the kitchen, I heard a crash of dishes. Mom had heard the scream. "Girls!" Mom's voice called out, frantic. "What was that noise?" "Stay back, Lana!" Henry roared. The thug with the baseball bat charged. Chapter 24. The Alpha Unleashed. The man swung the bat. It was a vicious horizontal arc aimed at Henry's ribs. It should have shattered bone. It hit nothing but air. Henry moved. He didn't move like a human. He moved like a blur, a glitch in reality. 1 second he was standing there, the next he was inside the attacker's guard. Henry's hand shot out. He didn't punch the man. He gripped the man's throat. He lifted him. With one hand, Henry lifted a 200-pound man off the floor. The thug gagged, his feet kicking uselessly in the air, the bat clattering to the ground. Henry tossed him. He threw him across the room like a bag of trash. The man hit the wall with a sickening crunch and slid down, unconscious. 1. Henry counted calmly. The second man, the one with the knife, hesitated. He looked at his fallen friend. He looked at Henry. Then he saw us peeking over the sofa. He lunged, not at Henry, at me. "No!" I screamed, scrambling back. The knife flashed in the lightning, but Enzo was there. The silent giant stepped out of the shadows. He didn't use flash. He used efficiency. Enzo grabbed the man's wrist. Snap. The knife fell. Enzo headbutted him. The thug dropped like a stone. That left Vinny. Vinny stood alone in the doorway, holding his crowbar. He looked at his 2 unconscious men. He looked at Henry, who was walking toward him slowly. Henry's eyes were glowing. In the dark room, they were 2 burning coins of gold. "You," Henry said. His voice wasn't human. It was a distorted, layered growl. "You broke my door." "Stay back," Vinny screamed. His voice cracked. He swung the crowbar. "I'll kill you. I'll kill all of you." He swung it overhead, a desperate, lethal strike aimed at Henry's skull. Henry didn't dodge. He raised his hand. Clang. He caught the crowbar. He caught the steel bar in mid-swing, stopping it inches from his face. The impact should have broken his hand. It didn't even make him flinch. Vinny pulled. The crowbar didn't move. It was rooted in Henry's grip like it was stuck in stone. "You threaten my mate," Henry whispered, leaning close. "You threaten my pack." "Let go!" Vinny shrieked. "Let go?" Henry asked. He tightened his grip. Crack! The sound of stressing metal filled the silent room. Henry twisted his wrist. The solid steel crowbar began to bend. It curled like soft clay. It twisted into a pretzel loop right in Vinny's hands. Vinny let go, stumbling back in horror. "Monster!" Vinny gasped. Suddenly, a beam of light cut through the darkness. The kitchen door swung open. "I found the flashlight!" Mom's voice announced triumphantly. "And the candles! Who is screaming?" The beam of the flashlight swept across the room. It hit the broken door. It hit the unconscious men. And then it landed on Henry. He was standing there, chest heaving, gold eyes fading back to brown, and in his hand he held a steel crowbar twisted into a perfect knot. Mom stopped. The flashlight beam held steady on the metal. The room went deadly silent. We waited for the scream. We waited for the collapse. Mom lowered the light. She looked at the thugs on the floor. She looked at Henry. "Henry?" she asked softly. Chapter 25. The Bent Steel. The beam of the flashlight didn't waver. It cut through the darkness like a laser, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It held steady on Henry's hand, on the crowbar. The steel was twisted into a perfect loop like a piece of soft licorice. No human hand could do that. Not with adrenaline, not with leverage. It was impossible physics. I held my breath. My chest hurt. I waited for the sound of my mother gasping. I waited for the thud of her body hitting the floor as her heart gave out. Henry didn't move. He stood frozen, his chest heaving, his shirt torn at the shoulder. He looked at Mom. His eyes were wide, filled with a terrifying mix of apology and fear. "Lana?" Henry whispered. His voice was rough. Mom took a step forward. The floorboards creaked. "Stay back, Mom," Sophia cried from behind the sofa. "It's dangerous." Mom ignored her. She walked right past Vinny, who was cowering against the wall, staring at his bent weapon in horror. She walked up to Henry. She reached out. Her small, pale hand hovered over the twisted metal. She touched it. It was still warm from the friction of Henry's grip. "Solid steel," Mom murmured. She tapped it with her fingernail. Clink. She looked up at Henry. She had to crane her neck back. The flashlight cast long, eerie shadows on his face, highlighting the sharp angles of his jaw, the predatory intensity of his eyes. "You bent it," Mom said. It wasn't a question. Henry swallowed. He looked at me, seeking help. "I was adrenalized. It is a medical phenomenon." "Don't lie to me, Henry," Mom said softly. Her voice was steady, stronger than I had heard it in years. "I may be old, and my heart may be tired, but I am not blind." She shined the light on the unconscious men on the floor. She saw the man thrown through the drywall. She saw the man knocked out cold. "These men broke into my house," Mom said. "They had weapons." "Yes," Henry admitted. "And you stopped them." "Yes." Mom looked at the crowbar again. She gripped it. She tried to unbend it. It didn't budge a millimeter. "Who are you really, Henry?" she asked. The silence was deafening. The storm raged outside, thunder rumbling like a drum roll. Henry straightened his spine. He stopped shrinking. He accepted his fate. "I am not normal," Henry said. "I am stronger, faster. I am the alpha." I closed my eyes. This is it. She dies now. Chapter 26. The truth. Mom stared at him for a long, agonizing minute. Then she let out a long sigh. Her shoulders dropped. "Well," Mom said, "I suppose that explains the pickle jar." My eyes snapped open. "What?" Mom lowered the flashlight. She walked over to the armchair and sat down heavily. She didn't look scared. She looked relieved. "The pickle jar," Mom repeated. "At lunch, you shattered the neck of the glass without even trying, and the reflex catch with the napkin. And the way you growled at the mailman last Tuesday." "You heard that?" Henry asked, looking shocked. "I wear a hearing aid, Henry," Mom said dryly. "I turned it down because you were loud, but I heard it. No human makes a sound like that." She looked at us, me, Sophia, Zoey, peeking out from behind the sofa like frightened children. "You girls thought you were protecting me," Mom said. A sad smile touched her lips. "You thought if I knew Henry was different, I would keel over." "The doctor said no shocks," I whispered, stepping out. Tears were streaming down my face. "We were so scared, Mom." "I know," Mom said. She held out her hand. I ran to her and knelt by her chair. She stroked my hair. "But I'm tougher than I look, Livy." She looked back at Henry. "I knew you were dangerous the moment you walked into this apartment," Mom told him. "I saw the way you looked at the door, like a guard dog, like a wolf." Henry flinched at the word. "But," Mom continued, her voice firm, "I also saw how you looked at Olivia. You looked at her like she was the only air in the room, and I saw how you drank tea from a tiny cup just to be polite." She pointed at the thugs on the floor. "Did you kill them?" she asked. "No," Henry said quickly. "Unconscious. They will have headaches, but they live." "Good," Mom said. "I don't want blood on the rug. It's impossible to get out." She stood up again. She walked back to Henry. She looked small and frail next to his hulking frame, but she held the power in the room. "You are a monster, Henry Jones," Mom said. Henry looked down at his feet. "I am. But," she reached up and patted his cheek, "you are our monster. You saved my girls. You saved my home." Henry looked up. His eyes were wet. "You are not afraid?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Oh, I'm terrified," Mom admitted cheerfully. "But the world is a scary place. It's nice to have the big bad wolf on our side for a change." Chapter 27. The Acceptance. The tension in the room broke like a fever. Sophia let out a whoop of joy. "Yes, finally. We can talk about it. Mom, did you see him throw that guy? It was awesome." Zoey stood up and adjusted her glasses. She slid her silver fork back into her pocket. Acceptable outcome. Heart rate remains within safe parameters. Henry stood in the middle of the room, looking completely bewildered. He had expected screaming. He had expected a funeral. Instead, he was being praised. "James," Mom called out to the kitchen door, "you can come out now and bring the broom. We have a mess." James poked his head out. He saw Henry standing there, not in chains, not exiled. He grinned. "Yes, ma'am." "And what do we do with the trash?" Mom asked, gesturing to Vinny and his crew. Henry's face hardened. The Alpha returned. "Enzo," Henry commanded, "take them. The police will find them tied up at the precinct, with a full confession pinned to their chests." "Understood," Enzo grunted. He grabbed Vinny by the collar and dragged him out into the rain like a bag of laundry. The apartment was quiet again. The storm outside was fading to a gentle drizzle. Henry walked over to Mom. He looked exhausted. The adrenaline crash was hitting him. "Lana," Henry said. He took her hand. "I apologize for the deception. I wanted to keep you safe." "I know," Mom said. She squeezed his hand. Then her face got serious. Her grip tightened. It was surprising how strong she was. "But listen to me closely, Henry," Mom said. Her voice dropped. It wasn't sweet anymore. It was a mother's voice. "I accept what you are. I accept the claws, and the strength, and the growling." She looked him dead in the eye. "But if you ever hurt my daughter, if you ever break her heart," she pointed to the bent crowbar on the floor. "I will find a silver bullet," Mom whispered, "and I won't miss. Do you understand?" Henry smiled. It wasn't his fake smile. It was real. It was wide. He bowed his head, a sign of total submission. "Loud and clear, ma'am," Henry said. "I would expect nothing less." Mom smiled, the tension vanishing. "Good. Now, somebody fix my door. It's drafty in here." I watched them. The wolf and the sheep. The secret was out. The danger was gone. Henry looked at me across the room. He didn't look like a CEO or a king. He looked like a man who had finally found his home. And for the first time, I didn't see a fake fiancé. I saw my future. Chapter 28. The morning after. The sun came up over the city, washing the apartment in gold light. The storm was gone. The air smelled like rain and wet pavement. I walked into the living room. Henry was asleep on the sofa. It was a small, floral sofa. Behind him, a heavy tarp was taped over the gaping hole where the front door used to be, and I could see Enzo's shadow pacing the hallway outside. Henry was a massive alpha king. It was a tight fit. His legs hung off the end, his feet resting on the coffee table. One arm was draped over his eyes. He looked peaceful. For the first time since I met him, the tension in his jaw was gone. I set a mug of coffee on the table. Clink. Henry's eyes snapped open. He didn't jump. He just woke up instantly, alert. He looked at me. He looked at the room. He remembered. "My neck," Henry groaned, sitting up. A frantic pop echoed from his spine. This furniture was designed for hobbits. "It's cozy," I smiled, sitting on the armrest. "Drink your coffee. It's the cheap stuff." Henry took the mug. He inhaled the steam. "It smells perfect." He took a sip and looked at me over the rim. His gaze was heavy, intense. "Olivia," he said. "Yeah?" "The contract," Henry said. "The debt, the engagement." My stomach tightened. "Right. The deal. Vinny is gone. You paid the debt. I guess we're done?" "You don't need a fake fiancé if the threat is neutralized." I started to stand up. "I can type up a termination agreement." Henry reached out, his hand wrapped around my wrist. His grip was warm and unyielding. "Sit," he commanded softly. I sat. "The deal is void," Henry stated. "I breached the terms." "And the debt?" I asked. "The 50,000? "Consider it a signing bonus for the rest of your life," Henry said, his eyes softening. "I shredded the ledger an hour ago." "You did?" "Rule number 1 of the contract," Henry recited. "No emotional attachment. Strictly business." He pulled me closer. I slid off the armrest and onto the cushion next to him. His heat enveloped me. "I failed," Henry whispered. "I am compromised. I do not want to go back to the penthouse. I do not want to sleep in a king-sized bed if you are not in it." He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers brushed my neck, sending shivers down my spine. "I don't want to be fake anymore, Olivia. I want to be real. I want the chaos. I want the noise. I want the burnt lasagna." "And the sisters?" I asked breathlessly. "They're a package deal." "I will tolerate them," Henry promised. "I will even tolerate the silver fork." I laughed. It was a wet, happy sound. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay?" "Real," I said. "Let's be real." Henry smiled. He leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't for a camera. It wasn't for a gala. It was slow, deep, and tasted like coffee and morning. "Good," Henry murmured against my lips. "Now, please, help me stand up. My back is broken." Chapter 29. The proposal. 3 months later. The apartment door was fixed. In fact, it was better than fixed. Henry had installed a reinforced steel core door that looked like wood but could stop a tank. "Subtle," Mom had said. "Secure," Henry had argued. We were on the balcony. It was evening. The city lights twinkled below us. Inside, Sophia was teaching Enzo how to do a TikTok dance. Enzo looked like he wanted to die, but he was doing it. Zoey was explaining the stock market to Mom. Henry leaned against the railing. He looked at me. "Regrets?" he asked. "None," I said, "though Sophia is stealing all your hoodies." "I noticed," Henry sighed. "She says they possess alpha drip." He turned to face me fully. The humor faded from his dark brown eyes, replaced by an intense, human solemnity. "Olivia," Henry said, "you have seen me at my worst. You have seen the violence. You have seen the beast." "I have," I agreed. "And you stayed." "I did." He reached into his pocket. He didn't pull out a ring box. He pulled out a key. It was heavy, old iron, intricate and rusted in a way that looked deliberate. It hung on a leather cord. "This is not a key to a house," Henry said, "or a car." I took it. It was cold and heavy in my palm. "What is it?" "It is the key to the pack vault," he said seriously. "It is beneath the tower. It holds the history of my bloodline. The gold, the treaties, the secrets." He covered my hand with his, closing my fingers over the key. "No outsider has ever held this," Henry said. "Giving this to you, it is dangerous. It means you hold my life in your hand." "Henry," I whispered, "I have billions of dollars, Olivia. I can buy you diamonds. I can buy you islands. But those are just things." He knelt, one knee on the concrete balcony. "This key is trust," he said. "Absolute, total trust. Be my queen. Run my life. Manage my schedule. Keep my secrets. Be my wife." Tears pricked my eyes. It was so him. Practical. Heavy. Serious. "Are you asking me to marry you?" I asked. "Or be your admin forever?" "Both," Henry growled, a smile tugging at his lips. "I cannot function without you. The pack needs a mother, and I need you." I squeezed the key. "Okay," I whispered, "but Sophia is never allowed to have a copy." "Agreed," Henry said instantly. "Yes," I said. "Yes, Alpha." He stood up and pulled me into his arms. He kissed me, lifting me off the ground. From inside the apartment there was a loud crash. "I'm okay," Sophia yelled. "The lamp is ugly anyway." Henry buried his face in my neck and groaned. "Chaos. Your chaos," I reminded him. "My chaos," he agreed. Chapter 30. The Wedding, the Epilogue. The wedding was loud. It was held in the botanical garden Henry had bought for Mom. He actually bought it. Sophia was the maid of honor. She wore a dress that was slightly too short and flirted with the priest. Zoey was the ring bearer. She had analyzed the structural integrity of the wedding cake and advised everyone not to stand too close to the fondant. Mom cried through the whole ceremony. She sat in the front row holding a handkerchief, looking at Henry like he was her own son. Henry stood at the altar. He looked terrifyingly handsome in a tuxedo. When the priest asked if anyone objected, Enzo stood by the door and cracked his knuckles loudly. Nobody objected. We said, "I do." Henry kissed me. His eyes flashed gold for just a second. The crowd cheered. As we walked down the aisle, I saw a flash of white in the back row. Kendrick, the rival Alpha, was standing there. He was wearing a white suit. He held a glass of champagne. I tensed. I squeezed Henry's hand. "Henry," I whispered, "Kendrick is here." Henry looked. He didn't growl. He didn't attack. Kendrick raised his glass. He nodded. It was a sign of respect, a truce. Next to Kendrick on the bench was a gift, a brand new industrial-grade toaster. It was a smug reminder of the night we almost starved, a final jab at Henry's pride. Henry let out a short, sharp laugh. "Let him stay," Henry whispered. "He knows better than to cause trouble today." "Why?" "Because," Henry said, nodding at the front row. "Your mother is armed." I looked. Mom was hugging a guest, but she was patting her purse significantly, the purse where she probably kept a silver fork, just in case. We reached the end of the aisle. The doors opened. The limo was waiting. Henry swept me up into his arms, bridal style. The crowd went wild. Rice rained down on us. "You're happy," I accused him as he carried me to the car. "I am full," he corrected. He placed me in the car and climbed in beside me. The door shut, muffling the noise of the party. For a second it was quiet. Henry looked at me. "Ready?" "Ready," I said. "Where are we going? The Maldives? Paris?" Henry smirked. He tapped on the glass partition. "The board officially backed down this morning," he whispered to me. "The merger is signed. They love the new and improved family man, Henry." "Home, James," Henry said. "Lana is making pot roast." I laughed. I leaned my head on his shoulder. The chaos wasn't over. It was just beginning, and the Alpha King wouldn't have it any other way. Bonus chapter, The Princess of Chaos, 5 years later. The Jones Tower was no longer a silent museum of black marble and cold glass. It was now a high-security obstacle course. There were colorful plastic blocks scattered across the $5,000 rugs. There were crayon drawings of wolves on the mahogany walls. And, currently, there was a hostage situation. Henry Jones, the Alpha King, the man who made world leaders tremble, was sitting in the middle of his executive office floor. He was wearing a pink feather boa and a plastic tiara that was 3 sizes too small. "Jesse," Henry said. His voice was a low, desperate rumble. "I have a board meeting in 10 minutes. I cannot be a sparkle pony for the board." 4-year-old Jessie Jones didn't flinch. She had her father's jet black hair and her mother's stubborn, wide-eyed stare. But most importantly, she had inherited the Alpha's gold eyes. Right now, those eyes were glowing with toddler-grade mischief. "You're not a pony, Daddy," Jessie said, waving a plastic wand. "You're a flower. Sit still, I'm watering you." She dumped a handful of glitter over his head. "Enzo!" Henry barked, not moving an inch. "Extraction! Now!" Enzo, the scarred head of security, was standing by the door. He was holding a tiny pink tea set. Over the last 5 years, he had aged 10 years. "I can't, sir," Enzo whispered, looking haunted. "She told me if I moved, she'd tell Aunt Sophia that I like her new perfume. I can't take the flirting, Alpha. I'm a broken man." The office door swung open. Olivia walked in, followed by the Council of Chaos. Mom was carrying a tray of cookies. Sophia was wearing a shirt that said, "Auntie's Little Monster." Zoey was holding a clipboard, likely calculating Jessie's developmental milestones. "Oh, look at you," Sophia squealed, pulling out her phone. "The Alpha King is blooming. This is going on the Pack Instagram." "Sophia, I will banish you to the Southern Territory," Henry snarled, though he didn't shake off the tiara. "Don't growl at the girls, Henry," Mom scolded, setting the cookies down. "It's bad for the child's social development. Jessie, did Daddy try to escape his flower pot?" "He growled at the butterfly," Jessie said, pointing a finger at Enzo. "Bad dog," Zoey noted, ticking a box on her clipboard. "Aggression toward imaginary insects. We'll need to increase his time-out duration." Henry looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Olivia, help me." I smiled and leaned against his desk. "I don't know, Henry. The pink really brings out the gold in your eyes. It says, 'I am a fierce leader who also enjoys nap time.'" "I am the king," Henry reminded everyone, his voice vibrating the floor. "I lead 1,000 wolves. I control a billion-dollar empire. I am—" "A tulip," Jessie interrupted, patting his cheek. "Now shush! The sun is going down. You have to close your petals." Henry let out a long, defeated sigh. He closed his eyes. "I have lost control of my pack," Henry muttered. "You never had it, dear," Mom said, handing him a cookie. "You were just the only one who didn't know." Henry took a bite of the cookie. He looked at Jessie, who was now trying to climb onto his shoulders to see the forest. He reached up, his massive hand steadying her with a gentleness that would have shocked his enemies. He looked at me and winked. He might be a flower. He might be a sparkle pony. He might be surrounded by the most chaotic women in the world. But as Jessie let out a tiny, high-pitched howl of victory, and the sisters started arguing over which movie to watch, Henry Jones looked like the most powerful man in the world. "Fine," Henry growled, lifting Jessie onto his head. "But if Kendrick sees me like this, I'm biting everyone." "Kendrick is already here," Zoey said, checking her watch. "He's in the lobby. He brought Jessie a pony. A real one." Henry stood up so fast the tiara rattled. "He did what?" The Alpha King was back. He stormed toward the elevator, pink boa trailing behind him, ready to start a new war over a pony. "I love this family," Sophia laughed, grabbing a cookie. I watched them go, the monster and his princess. The chaos was exactly where it belonged. "Gertie?"